それではこの講演会の企画は東京大学の先端科学技術研究センターとのジョイントでもございます。そこで、ここで最初に総括戦略研究オープンラボ代表でいらっしゃいます、東京大学先端科学技術研究センター教授の池内先生からご挨拶を頂戴したいと思います。よろしくお願いします。
東京大学先端科学技術研究センターの池内と申します。今日授業の第1回にこのようにお邪魔することになってしまいまして、大変恐縮ですが、石田先生、古谷先生の温かい、ご協力によって我々のプロジェクトでお招きした弁護士の方の特に ICC ですね、国際刑事裁判所がどのように戦争犯罪をあるいは戦争における犯罪を追及していくのかということについて実践的な立場からお話ししていただけるんだと思っております。これを、自己紹介といいますか、このプロジェクトをやっておりまして、その一環で、今回アキーレ・カンパーニャさんをお招きしているんですが、イタリアの弁護士でかつその ICC に、関与されている。ちょっと国際司法というのはどういうふうに動くのか、私自身、そんなによく分かっていないので、これでお話を聞いて理解したいと思っていますが、我々のプロジェクトというのは、ご紹介いただきました総発戦略研究オープンラボというのは、東京大学の先端科学技術研究センターの中に作っておりまして、そこでいろいろな、特に、国際紛争とかセキュリティに関する研究をしておりまして、今回はここにいらっしゃいます、国末典人、特任教授ですね、長い間ジャーナリストとして国際的な紛争を扱ってこられた、その中でこの国際 ICC に関して今、活発に取材をされていて、その過程でこの弁護士の方をお招きしたという形です。それでは、この後はお願い、カンパネさんにお願いしたいと思いますが、はい、お渡ししてください。
池内先生、ありがとうございました。So I would like to change the language into English. So I would like to welcome Mr. Akire Kampani to Waseda University, and we are very pleased to be here to hear your lectures, because Japan is a little bit remote from the site of the hostilities in Ukraine, so we need to experience the actual situation of the Ukraine, and I think your lecture will help us to understand the current situation in Ukraine. So I would like to invite you to, now you have the floor here.
Now it works. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me here to Japan. Japan is such a beautiful country and a country at the forefront of the defense of international law. So please, if you can move to the first slide. The international legal order needs defending now, as we know. It's an international legal order based on peace. But I'm not talking about peace as a moral obligation or as a policy, okay? No, I'm talking about peace as a legal obligation. A legal obligation countries signed off upon, and they are bound to. So Russia's actions are right now disrupting the legal order based on peace, and they are disrupting it by violating international law and by disrupting the institutions that are set forth to protect that legal order. When we talk about peace, we talk about, in its legal dimension, we talk about the rules on the use of military force. And obviously, the violation of these rules may result in what is named as the crime of aggression. As we all know, the crime of aggression does not apply to many countries and many important world leaders. And this is one of the first problems. While the world leaders decided to put peace at the top of the rank, at the top of the hierarchy of values and foundations, they did not care about establishing a strong accountability mechanism. And so we have world leaders that are free to violate the laws on peace. The UN Charter obviously sets forth the principles and the rules that allows us to understand what an aggression is. However, as you, as legal students and scholars know, a crime is a different type of law. It's a provision that has certain features, and the UN Charter is not a criminal law, which is why nobody can borrow rules from treaties and other pieces of law, customary law, to design a criminal accusation against anybody, because a criminal law must be statutory, it must be written, it must pre-exist to the crime, and it cannot be borrowed by somewhere else. We have a perfect criminal offense set forth by the Rome Statute, but as we know, it does not apply to many important world leaders that cannot be held accountable under that perspective. But not everything is lost. If you move to the next slide, please. So as I was saying, well, peace is binding. The world leaders did not care about establishing a legal mechanism of accountability, and this is what I refer to, those rules that surround peace, that protect peace. And I obviously think about the crime of aggression. But not everything is lost, because we can establish accountability on the basis of other crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. Please, next slide. I wanted to mention an important Japanese lawyer. If you study the Tokyo International Military Tribunal activities, lawyer Fusaki Uzawa was very skillful in arguing that there was no crime of aggression in international law, and he was raising the argument to challenge the accusations that the tribunal was laying down against Japanese war criminals. I think that he was right. He was right. You cannot try people for a crime of aggression that is not foreseen by the law, by the international law. So that is a problem. But as I said, next slide, please. As I said, we may establish accountability for other crimes, other typologies that pertain to what we call the jus in bello. When we talk about the crime of aggression and the laws on peace, we talk about the jus ad bellum, which is how the use of military force can be considered lawful. Okay, jus in bello is what we call international humanitarian law. But I guess you are familiar with these concepts, and you have very, very skilled and great professors, among the best experts in the world, okay, for international law.
本当に簡単に今述べたことを説明させていただきますけれども、ロシアのウクライナ侵略というのは侵略犯罪というクライム・アグレッションと呼ばれるものに該当することになります。で、国連憲章上、侵略が違法な行為であることははっきりしています。でしかし、侵略犯罪を裁くフォーラムとしては、国際刑事裁判所があるんですけれども、今回のロシアの侵略犯罪については適用がありません。そのためにロシアの侵略犯罪そのものを裁くことはできないということになります。しかし、 ロシア兵などがウクライナの領域内で行った行為については犯罪にならないのかっていうと、それ以外の犯罪、ここにちょっと上がってますけども、戦争犯罪、ジェノサイド、それから人道に対する犯罪といったようなものが考えられるということであります。で、今最後にちょっとラテン語が出てきました、ユース・アドベルムとユース・イン・ベルムということです。で、ユース・アドベルムっていうのは、戦争そのものを禁止する国際法の内容です。国連憲章が武力による威嚇、武力の行使などを禁止している、侵略を禁止しているのがユース・アドベルムと呼ばれるものです。でもう一方でユース・イン・ベローっていうのは戦場において適用される法ですので、例えば捕虜を虐待してはいけないとか、文民と呼ばれる一般の民衆人々を殺害してはいけないというようなこういうルールです。で、これからおそらくご説明される戦争犯罪などはユース・イン・ベローの違反という形になります。で、現状では国際刑事裁判所においてユース・イン・ベローの違反、戦争犯罪や人道に対する罪などで、違反行為を行ったロシア兵やあるいはロシアの指導者たちを裁くということが重要になるということだろうと思います。OK, so please continue.
All right, we can switch to the next slide, please. And what about victims? Okay, we understand that there's a strong recognition for peace as a legal obligation, but the victims have been neglected. And we have seen that since Nuremberg and Tokyo tribunals, only now we have a right to participate to proceedings at the ICC, based on Article 68 of the Rome Statute. And, but however, victims' right protection is still ineffective. And when I think about that, I find another inconsistency in this system where world leaders keep putting peace at the top of the rank, but they forget about the victims. And in my opinion, the legal concept of peace is the absence of victimization. To me, in simple words, peace means no victims. We want peace because we don't want that victims are made, okay? And so, let me come to an argument of consistency, of global justice. Why should I be convicted for minor crimes, for example, tax frauds, or they are not minor crimes, but they are not as important as core international crimes, okay? So why people should walk inside a courtroom and get 5-10 years for financial crimes or minor stuff, when the world leaders can push a button and invade a 40 million inhabitants country by killing, massacring kids and women. So if those guys walk free, I don't want to be convicted by a criminal court. I don't think it's fair. I mean, this is not a rebellion. This is just to show you that there's a problem of consistency of the global justice systems. And at some point, people will want to see that when they walk inside the courtroom. They will think about the fact that Putin is not accountable, while he's capable of killing hundreds of thousands of persons on the basis of what? Of an ideology at best. But is an ideology enough to do that? Well, this is not what the countries, what the world leaders signed off. Not when they signed the UN Charter. Basically, they said, we will not do wars for ideology. They are bound to that. What happened? As you know, Russia notified the UN Security Council when they invaded Ukraine in February 2022. And, Putin made a speech, gave a speech, and also a written statement at the UN Security Council. Now, try to read what the reasons were to wage that war. I I honestly was surprised. I did not understand them. I did not. And when Ukraine filed an interim measure request with the ICJ, I'm talking about the International Court of Justice, not the International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice. Russia is bound to the International Court of Justice decisions, okay? There's no reason not to be. Well, when they were notified and someone of the hearing, what did they do? What did Russia do? They did not even go to the hearing. They did not present any observations other than a challenging jurisdiction that failed. But that was supposed to be the venue where one should have brought the evidence justifying the hard decision to launch such a war against a 40 million inhabitants country. And they did not even show up. So that's what lays behind a war like this. Now,
May I? Sorry.
Just a second. I just wanted to say that we are here to fight for accountability, to turn this around together. And let me just introduce myself after the professor summarizes what he did.
Very much. So, 今のところを要約すると、被害者ですね、ビクティムの観点が非常に重要で、先ほどから述べているように、戦争犯罪とかジェノサイド、あるいは人類に対する罪というものは、歴史的に見ると、例えば日本の東京裁判とかニュールンベルク裁判以降続いてきたわけですけども、被害者の視点というのは実はニュールンベルクや東京裁判では全く語られていません。東京裁判などで被害者に対する救済みたいなことは全く議論されたことがないわけです。しかし、彼が言うところで言うと、peace means no victims なので、つまり平和っていうのは被害者が誰もいなくなること、誰もいないことが平和なのに、これまでで言うと、言ってみれば政治指導者の間の合意によって平和が成り立っているということにしか過ぎなかった。でその形で言うと、まさにビクティム中心の平和というものを実現する必要がある。で、あともう一つ彼はコンシステンシーという一貫性ということについて語っています。つまり、例えば経済犯罪を犯した人でも5年、10年懲役になる人はいる。なのに、戦争の中で人を殺した人たちが何の罪も問われない。アカウンタビリティというんですけども、そのアカウンタビリティを問われないのは一貫性を欠いている。法的な一貫性を欠いている。でそれであれば我々はその法的な一貫性を問わなければならない。でロシアは、ICJ 国際司法裁判所にウクライナによって訴えられて裁判が始まっていますけれども、ロシアはそこに何の書面も出していないし、法廷にやってきてもいないと。でこういう状況を変えていく必要があって、我々はロシアのアカウンタビリティを問うためにここにいるのだと。彼の言葉を普遍すれば、日本はウクライナから相当遠いところではありますけれども、この問題に無関心であってはならないし、法的な観点で言えば犯罪を行った者は全ておしなべて処罰されるべきであり、適正な裁判にかかるべきであるということだろうと。Okay, thank you very much. So please continue.
Okay. Let me speak just a second about myself because I was required to do so, but of course it's no big deal. During the first part of my career, I come from San Marino. San Marino is a small country. Okay? Well, there's no one around. I mean, while I'm here in Tokyo, I see people everywhere, and it's also fun. In San Marino, there's no one. On the street, no one. Anyway, that's where I come from no man's land. During the first part of my career, I specialized in criminal law in complex cases. I was also bringing some cases to international courts, but they were mostly cases about right to a fair hearing. But Professor Furujuya was a member of the Human Rights Committee, so he knows what we're talking about. I did Article 14 cases, basically. But also freedom of expressions and things like that. I mean, that's something that now I think that every lawyer should be able to do that. when you have a case, a domestic case, sometimes you do not, you find violations of rights, and you know that you can have recourse to an international body, like, for example, the Human Rights Committee. Human Rights Committee, by the way, has an incredible filter. So most of the cases that I sent were simply sent back because they deal only with incredibly important stuff. Anyway, then I was admitted to practice before the ICC. I'm on the list of counsel, and in 2022 I decided to launch my program, assistance program for the victims of ongoing crime in Ukraine. And so I formed this team with Ukrainian lawyers, and then I will explain right now what our job is. So please.
May I summarize your background? It is, in a sense, a separated story, I think. So, 彼の今バックグラウンドを簡単に説明されましたけど、サンマリノ、ちっちゃい国だけどと言われてましたけど、地図で探してください。サンマリノの弁護士として、もちろん国内法上のさまざまな手続きをやってこられたわけですけども、今、私の名前も何か出てきましたけども、国連の人権委員会、これは市民的政治的権利に関する国際規約に基づいて出来上がっている委員会ですけども、その委員会への個人通報というんですけども、提訴などを手伝うこともやっていますし、それ以外の国際手続きにさまざまな形で提訴をするということもやっています。これは若干私の補足ですけれども、私、人権委員会の委員でしたので、そうすると個人通報の提訴を本人がやってくる場合もありますけども、弁護士さんの代理人がやる場合もあります。で、多くの先進国では、弁護士さんが国際的な提訴の手続きをやっているし、いくつかの国ではそれに公的扶助が出ます。国際弁護のような。で、そういうような形で、弁護士さんが国際的なプロジェクトにどんどん関わるようになって、とりあえずヨーロッパということですね。日本も今後そういうふうになっていくことが望ましいと思うんですけども。で、彼は現在ですからウクライナに入ってウクライナの弁護士などと協力をして ICC に提訴できるような証拠などを集めている。で ICC はもう一つ刑事手続きとしては被害者参加ができるようになっています。でその被害者参加手続きをするためには被害者をグループとしてまとめなければなりませんし、その被害者の人方々が、損害賠償の請求も付帯思想でできるようになっていますので、そういったことについても、関与をしているということだと思います。Okay, please continue.
By the way, I strongly encourage Japanese lawyers to join the list of counsel at the ICC, as I believe that there are, I don't know if one or two from Japan. Very well. Anyway, we need more. Okay, so what we do, first of all, what kind of remedies a victim can pursue, okay, in such a situation? I try to categorize the remedies in two branches. So there are remedies that deal with the individual responsibility of the person. So basically, those are criminal law remedies. It's a pure accountability dimension, okay? Usually, you would not file a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, against a war criminal. It's ineffective, and it's also, it stumbles upon a lot of problems. It's not the right tool, basically. Anyway, the other branch is the liability of the state. So basically, you can have resort to bodies like the Human Rights Committee, for example, or the European Court of Human Rights, to establish that the country, the respondent state, violated fundamental rights. And of course, in our war, there are a lot of fundamental rights violations. That's okay, take it for granted. That's the way it is. So let's describe one bit. If we think about the personal liability, we should not only think about the ICC, the International Criminal Court. I guess everybody, thinks about and hears about the ICC every day because of the arrest warrants and so on. But always remember that based on Article 17 of Rome Statute, what you have is a principle rule of complementarity. So the ICC is supposed to be working basically when national tribunals cannot secure justice. Okay? That does not mean that the ICC is prevented to investigate and to hold proceedings when the national justice system is working. Like in the instant case, you have both Ukrainian courts and the ICC working on the cases, okay? But the ICC basically would not care about regular soldiers. The ICC would care about the highest ranking commanders, the general, and Putin, okay? While Ukraine does deal with low-ranking soldiers, and many Russians have been taken prisoners and tried. I mean, not everybody, because as you know, by the way, prisoners of war enjoy the strongest legal protection. I mean, Geneva III and so on. But anyway, Ukraine tries perpetrators in Ukraine in criminal trials. And by the way, we had a hearing in Kyiv. I did not attend, but my lawyers in Ukraine did. And we joined as a civil party for one of the biggest tragedies in Bucha. It was, by the way, it was a family that was killed when they tried to evacuate. So the Russian column opened fire against the car, and everybody died. Anyway, let's move ahead. No, sorry, let's remain over there for a moment. Foreign local tribunals may be helpful. Some of these tribunals, like, I don't know, let's make an example. France have rules that allow them to pursue criminal cases against perpetrators of core international crimes committed elsewhere, I mean, not in France. They have a rule whereby jurisdiction is established when the perpetrator is found in the territory of France, which is possible. Sometimes, you know, they flee the country. There are endless reasons why a Russian soldier might be in France, for example. So that's one of the ways, but another very important ways that I am pursuing myself is the recognition of Ukrainian judgments abroad. You should know that since the facts dating back to 2014, Crimea, Donbass, which I have to say constitute a continuum with 2022. This is extremely important. The invasion, the war did not start in 2022, it started in 2014. And that's on the basis of 2014 activities that Ukraine issued those declarations that allow the ICC jurisdiction. They accepted ICC jurisdictions. And okay, the whole thing continued in 2022. But since 2014, there are more than 1,000 Ukrainian judgments awarding damages for the victims against Russia as a state. Those are civil proceedings that have been carried out after criminal proceedings were closed in Ukraine. And what I did is exactly last week, I filed the first such recognition request in Italy. So we will try to see how it goes and possibly look for other countries. And I'm here asking you, maybe Japan would have a legal system that allows that. Because we should always remember that this is the first time in history that victims stand in front of assets. Okay? There are $300 billion of Russian assets frozen in many countries. In Europe, also part in the US. Honestly, I don't know the situation in Japan, how many assets, Russian assets have been frozen by the Japanese banks. But if that's the case, we should think if there is a possibility for Japan to recognize Ukrainian judgment. So that's one of the, okay.
Thank you. 責任を問う方法として、ここにあるように、パーソナルな、つまり、犯罪を行った個人を裁いたり責任を問うという方法と、国家の責任を問うという方法があります。で、今、個人の責任の問題を少し議論されてましたけども、で個人の責任を問う方法としては、皆さんから左ですね、ICC、それからウクライナの裁判所、それから他の国の裁判所みたいなところが刑事裁判や民事的な損害賠償などを処理することができるということです。で、先ほど述べました通り、ICC それ自身も、損害賠償のシステムを持っていますけれども、ICC は、先ほど彼が言ったところで言うと、つまりハイランキングな人たち、プーチン大統領とか、こういう人たちだけを裁くので、有罪になった人たちが与えた損害についての損害賠償だけが認められるということなので、末端の兵士が行った戦争犯罪などの、責任はICC では問われることがなかなか難しい。でそうなると、ウクライナの国家内における裁判所が裁くと。で現実にウクライナの裁判所は、ロシアの兵隊を捕虜にしていますので、その捕虜たちが実際に戦争犯罪を行ったということであれば、裁判、刑事裁判をすでに行っています。でそれは相当の数になっているということです。それから、もう一つ述べているのは、フランスなどが、最後の外国の裁判所ですけれども、フランスの裁判所などが、フランスに所在するロシアの兵隊で、犯罪を行ったという容疑がある人を逮捕し、裁判を行っていると。でこういうような形で重層的な裁判が行われているということです。で一方で、民事の損害賠償については、ウクライナの裁判所がたくさんのその民事賠償に関する判決を出しています。でただ、当然のことながら、その判決を執行したくても財産があんまりたくさんないわけですね。でそこで、他の国に判決執行、これ国際司法ですけども、判決執行、承認執行をしてもらいたいということで、いくつかの国が、ウクライナ裁判所が出した判決の承認執行をし始めている。先ほど申し上げた先週でしたけど、イタリアでそういうことが行われていて、日本でもぜひウクライナ裁判所の判決の承認執行をしてもらいたい。で、現在ロシアへの経済制裁によってロシアの資産が多くの国で凍結されています。私も、彼は日本がどのぐらい凍結しているか知らないけどって言ってますけど、私も具体的には知りませんけど、日本も凍結しています。西ヨーロッパの国々やアメリカは全部凍結ですから、それだけ資産をたくさん持っている。その資産を、判決の承認執行で使って被害者に対する損害賠償に使えないかというのが彼のこの戦略であるということです。Okay?
We also use international bodies that deal with fundamental rights. So basically, the European Court for Human Rights, the Human Rights Committee, the Human Rights Council. I'm talking about jurisdictional bodies, okay? I mean, these are bodies that would hear your case and issue a decision based on a jurisdictional activity. So they adjudicate, okay? Irrespective of the fact that bodies like the Human Rights Committee, by the way, would not grant compensation awards. But anyway, they adjudge, they hear the case and they issue a jurisdictional decision. I'm not talking about the commissions. There are many commissions, fact-finding commissions, even NGOs, if you will. I use them as well, and they are extremely important. Like, for example, the International Independent Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine. They actually, we deal with that as well. When we file to a body like the European Court of Human Rights, let's speak about the Human Rights Committee. When we file with the Human Rights Committee, of course we claim violation of fundamental rights. So it's another thing. When we send a communication to the OTP, we might be thinking about, crimes, actual crimes, like the willful killing, Article 7, Article 8, Article 6, genocide, okay? No, when we talk about fundamental rights, we usually would file on the basis of violations of the right to life, for example, which is Article 6 of the International Covenant for Protection of Civil and Political Rights. Article 7, prohibition of torture. These are the cases, okay? Of course, fundamental rights do coexist with international crimes and with the international humanitarian law that, when it applies, basically changes everything. Because, you know, violation of fundamental rights with or without IHL changes law. But I think that I don't want to take too much time I don't want theory to take too much time to move to the hard stuff, okay? So please, oh yeah, we have, of course, even corporation might use remedies, but in a more limited way. So a company may, for example, file with the European Court of Human Rights. Okay, let's say something about the European Court of Human Rights. ACHR has a problem. That is, Russia quit. Russia quit the Council of Europe, and Strasbourg would not be competent for cases after 16 September 2020. So that's something that you have to. What I was saying, corporation may file with the ECHR. They, as far as I'm concerned, they cannot file with the Human Rights Committee because Human Rights Committee would hear cases only by individuals. And that's the same with the Human Rights Council. Human Rights Committee is different from the Human Rights Council. Human Rights Council was established by resolution number, it was the previous one, sorry. So companies, can a company file a form to asking to join proceedings at the ICC? Yes and no. I mean, I represent institutions, public schools, a cultural center in Ukraine, also a private school. But a private company, I mean a profitable company, that simply carries on its business, cannot file. If they have property that in some way is dedicated to some social or cultural activity, yes, like private schools can do that. But if they do regular profitable business, no, they can't. That's Rule 85. Whatever, I guess we should move forward. Oh. Well, I think that I could skip this one. It's the description of the main offices we deal with the ICC, but maybe you know more than me. I mean, we have the VPRS, the Victims Participation Reparation Section, it's a branch of the registry. The OTP, the Office of the Prosecutor. Now, the unit that works more than anyone else on the situation. And the trial chamber, that in this moment we do not engage with the trial chamber because you can, in theory, you can make submissions, but in practice, it's, you know, at this stage it's useless because you always have to remember that the arrest warrants are sealed, and even offices at the ICC do not know what the contents are of the arrest warrants because they have not been unsealed. So we have the press releases by the OTP, and that's where our knowledge stops. So we don't know if our victims are related to the charges that the OTP is developing. Okay? Oh, yes, we can move forward.
So may I summarize here? 今ちょっと話が若干ちょっと右往左往してはいるんですけども、まず最初にヨーロピアンコード・オブ・ヒューマン・ライツっていうのがあります。で、ヨーロッパの場合にはそのカウンシル・ヨーロッパ審議会っていうのがあって、そこがヨーロッパ人権裁判所っていうのを作っていて、ここにたくさんの事件が上がります。で、ヨーロッパ人権裁判所にこう提訴するっていう 可能性も当然あるんですけども、2022年にロシアはカースルヨーロップから脱退をしているので、ヨーロッパ人権裁判所はもう使えなくなっているということです。それから、私が所属していた人権委員会、それから国連の人権理事会といったような場もありますけれども、ここでも、例えば個人の訴えは認められるけれども、会社とかそれ以外の団体の訴えみたいなものは認められないということです。これは ICC でも同じでして、ただ例えば先ほど言った例えば私立学校とか会社が何らかの損害を受けているという場合に請求のしようがないっていうようなそういった問題もあるというふうに言っています。で、あとはこの先ほど出たICC の組織の問題ですけども、ご存知の通り、ウクライナのケースについては、プーチン大統領ともう一人の2人について、逮捕状が公に出たことが公表されています。おそらくはそれ以外にも逮捕状は出ているんだろうと思われます。隠されています。隠されていること自身は、その人が逮捕しやすくなるので、公表されてないということはメリットがあるんですけども、彼らにとってみると、実は自分の被害者がその犯罪の被害者なのかどうかっていうことがよくわからないということで、つまり被害者を特定するためには加害者を特定しなきゃいけないんだけど、ICC が一体誰を訴追しようとしているのかということがわからないと、被害者がわからないっていう、こういうジレンマがあるんだろうというふうに思います。OK? Thank you very much.
All right, then. These are the forms that we use. They are very important tool. They are powerful tool. I remind you, my mind goes to the situation of Hiroshima. So there was a survivor when in the following days, the days following the strike, the bombardment, the atomic bomb, and there was a priest, a German priest that worked he was a previous survivor of Hiroshima, Father Kleinsgorger. He was German. And I remember that he was thinking about filing compensation claims in all the disaster. I mean, those days they could not. And what did he find? He finds forms. He finds forms at the prefecture police. Forms are the only tool that you can use in such a situation. When you have hundreds and hundreds of cases, you have to work in such a way that you easily, quickly. This is not meant to work superficially. This is meant to work in a way that people might understand. If you talk to a Ukrainian victim, assuming that you learned Ukrainian, you might be in serious difficulty obtaining the information that you want. You give them a form in Ukrainian. These are the English version, but the ICC published the Ukrainian version. It's amazing. It works. We cannot work without these forms. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is very practical. We're talking about very practical stuff, and maybe you don't need that right now, but let me just tell you. I would like to switch to examining one of the cases, but let me tell you something. You as lawyers should never think to pursue war crimes, core international crimes, on your own. You don't work on your own. It's impossible. One person cannot do that. Because you need multiple skills, you need multiple resources, and do not even dare to do that. Okay? If you have an idea, you want to do this, first you have to create your own group. You need Ukrainian lawyers because they give you, they have certain features. When you work with a lawyer, they have confidentiality, like every other lawyer in the world. And they, of course, give you legal cover because where they work, they are supposed to operate in compliance with their law, which you sometimes might not be familiar with because you come from another country. Okay, if you are an international lawyer, you cannot know the legislation for every country of the earth. You need advisors. You need doctors to understand what electroshock torture causes because you don't know that. You don't know how to find the evidence of an electroshock session and also the damages that it causes. There are things that you do not understand. You need military advisors because you need to understand often, very often, the range a weapon can fire, and also the overall situation. A soldier can give you an opinion. I have a military advisor, and he says, look, Akile, in my opinion, the Russians here fire and they killed people, but it was in the middle of an exchange of fire, so that's not necessarily a crime, okay? You know, if you have a mortar bombardment and people get caught inside that, it might be a crime, but it might even not be a crime, because unfortunately, civilians die in war. That's a collateral damage that you cannot avoid. I mean, it's inevitable. Of course, you need translators. You need both Ukrainian and Russian because many documents and many evidence, much of the evidence is in Russian. And of course, logistic support. These are very, very practical stuff. Okay, let's move to the next. Among the skills that you need to possess, you need victim training, okay? You need training on how to handle victims. This is not something very, legal. I mean, it's not legal work, but it is something that you need to learn. You need to understand how not to re-traumatize these victims. And this is something that you can find. NGOs are pretty much attentive to this, and they receive guidelines. I use the guidelines for NGOs because it's hard for them. It's very hard, especially those who lost their kids. Those who lost their children are the worst off, and they don't want to speak about it. Also, of course, the victims of rape are not really happy to tell you what they suffer. All right, I think we have to move to the next one, otherwise I'm not going to finish. Please change the slide. All right, okay. So, I think we can choose between one or the other case. I will choose the next one, so please change the slide. I think it's been cut a little bit, but not important. I will go ahead anyway. So we have a case. This is a real case, okay? And let's discuss it. In simple terms, what happened here? Well, you had the Russian column advancing towards a small village in the Nikolaev region. Nikolaev is very close to Kherson. Maybe Kherson is more famous than that. We have cases in Kherson, and I have a team of lawyers working in Kherson. I have been to Kherson. And, all right, what went on here? The column was moving, and at some point they exchanged fire with the Ukrainians, but they captured this village. But they left a tank behind. And the villagers went inside the tent and took weapons from the tent. Okay? At some point, the Russians prevailed and had the time to recover the tank, and they were looking for this item that was taken by the population. So what did they do? They went to the chief, to the head of the village, okay, and they told them, look, if you don't give us back it was a grenade launcher. If you don't give us back the grenade launcher, we simply wipe your village out. We erase it from her. Okay, so the husband of the head of the village was a woman, and her husband decided to set off to look for this item, and he found it. It was at a villager's house, and he was not available to return the item. So this man, the husband of the head of the village, which was a community leader, okay, decided to return the item to the Russians. And he did a big mistake, because the Russians took him, they tortured him with a heinous system. They basically stuck a hand file in his mouth. They tied his head to block the jaw bones, and then they pulled the hand file, breaking the teeth. And then they pulled the nails with pliers, and ultimately, after some time, they also killed him. Now, this is a very important case because we have witnesses, others that have been tortured, alongside with this man, which was the community leader, have been witnessing everything. They are eyewitnesses of the torture. And also, they had, an understanding of how he was killed, but, at some point, the body was found in a drainage canal when the air was liberated, and he had a shot at the head, so there was no doubt. He was, identified, the corpse was identified, and so on. So, maybe I should stop to let you summarize the fact.
Thank you very much. ちょっと広島のことが研究されましたけれども、広島の原爆の被害者のコンペンセーション、賠償などはちょうど朝ドラで見た人もいると思いますけど、原爆裁判っていう、全く彼は研究してますけど、私が勝手に言ってますけど、原爆裁判っていうのが国内裁判があって、で、被害者の請求は認められなかったんですけども、でこういう形で被害者当時の法では被害者を救済ってあんまり考えられてなかったんですね。で今 ICC では先ほどちょっと出てきたみたいにフォーマットがちゃんとあって、で被害者がこのフォーマットを記入すればいいというふうになっていて、被害者フレンドリーな、でしかもこれはウクライナ語のバージョンがあるということになっています。でそういう形で被害者を救済するような枠組みっていうのが、徐々に国際的には出てきた。でもう一方で彼の仕事のような被害者を救済する仕事っていうのは一人では絶対にできないものなので、必ず、グループを作る必要がある。これは皆さんにも当てはまるんですけども、大きな訴訟になりますから、弁護団のような大きなグループを作る必要がある。しかもそれは単に法律家だけのグループではなくて、お医者ちょっと戻してくれるかな。It's okay. I will ask her to go back to some seat or the composer. Yes. 医者とか、それからミリタリーの専門家が必要。例えば、実際に彼は法律家ですけども、医学的にどういうことが行われているかっていうのは、検視を行う必要があるので、そのチームが必要だ。それから、軍人の専門家っていうのも必要で、例えば武器の射程がどのぐらいあるのかっていうことによって、実際にロシアの砲弾が飛んできているのかどうかみたいなことも考える必要があって、でそういうあるいは民間人を殺傷することが全部禁止されているわけではなくて、不随的損害と言いますけども、軍事目標を攻撃するときに一緒に民間人も殺傷してしまうというような場合には合法だというふうにされているので、不随的損害であるのか、それとも民間人をターゲットにした攻撃なのかということは、軍事の専門家によってしかわからない。それからこの手の問題でいうと、トランスレーター、その翻訳者や通訳が非常に重要で、この場合でウクライナ語やロシア語の問題といったものが、そういった全体のチームとして活動をしていくということが必要だと。でその上で重要なのは、ビクティムを扱う時のトレーニングが必要であると。でこれは法務研究家でもさまざまな形で行われていますけれども、例えば、被害者の方の状況を、インタビューするときにトラウマを与えないようにする必要がある。例えばお子さんを亡くした人に対してその状況を聞くということだけで、その方にとっては非常に大きなショックをもう一度思い起こさせることになるので、そういったことに対する訓練みたいなものも必要になってくると。でその意味で言うと、いろんな心理学も含めたカウンセラーのような人たちも含めたチームみたいなものが出来上がって、リーガル、メディカル、そしてミリタリー、サイコロジカルのような、そういったチームによって全体が動いていくということが必要だというふうにおっしゃっていました。で最後に具体的な事件のことについてお話ししますけど、私もちょっと完全には理解できないところもあるんですけども、ウクライナの小さな村のロシア軍が侵攻していって、で戦車やその他武器を 置いていくってことがあって、でそれを村人たちが取ったんですけども、それをロシア軍が後から回収するっていうことになり、返すという決断を村のリーダーがしたわけですけども、彼を含めた何人かが拷問にあり、最終的に殺されるというようなことがあった。でこの手のことがたくさん、ウクライナで起こって、とりわけブチャなどのような都市、村、町で起こっているということだと思います。OK?
Okay. I think that we are close to the end, and I would like to place your attention not on the crime of willful killing and murder, but in this case on the crime of torture. Why? Well, if you think about torture as a means to extract information, most of the time in wars, torture, which is always a crime, okay? Torture cannot be admitted, and if you read doctrine by military, in military handbooks and so on, it's always excluded. You cannot use torture to gain any military advantage, whatever important it is. But if torture remains confined to obtaining information is one thing. Instead, but when torture is used for other means, like terrorize, like inflict pain, like trying to force people not to give information, but to change, to turn your side, which is what happened in Kherson and in these places, when Russia outspokenly tried to Russify the whole area. They were trying to turn Ukrainians into cooperanti, so they were looking for these community leaders, and they wanted to turn them their side, okay? And they used torture to do that. Now, what is that? In my opinion, as we know that based on Rwanda case law for genocide, as we know that genocide can be committed by torture. Torture is one of the acts of genocide. Actually, it is not genocide by killing, of course, because by definition people would remain alive after torture, not in this case, but I'm focusing, as I said, on the torture side of things. So basically, if you take letter B of Article 6 of the Rome Statute, or of Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, because they are different articles, they are in different places, but they are worded exactly the same, as well as Article 4 of the Statute of the Special Tribunal for Rwanda. If you take that provision, that's genocide by causing serious mental and or bodily harm to the victim. So what does that mean? It means that torture, in this case, is meant to cause serious mental and bodily harm up to which point? How can you destroy a group, the national group that is foreseen as an element of the genocide crime? How can you destroy that group by torturing these people? Well, technically speaking, it's a very important question. You find the answer, in my opinion, in Kaya Shema. In Kaya Shema, where but actually it's an allegation by the prosecutor, there's reference therein, and you find the definition of the elimination of the group member by torture, in as much as torture render that person useless as a social unit of the group. So, when people are tortured, are raped, or are undergoing such treatment, they lose interest in life, they cannot be able to participate in the social life of that group. That's an act of genocide. Of course, you need the intention to destroy that group. Okay? You have to target a large part of these people, and you have to destroy the group or a significant part of the group as a genocide. Crime foreseen. I think I'm over.
今最後に述べられているのは殺人のようなものが問題だということは分かると思いますけれども、その当時は、拷問が非常に大きな問題だ。で戦時中、武力紛争下で拷問が行われることはしばしばあるんですけども、拷問のもちろん第一の目的は情報を取り出す、つまり何かを自白させて、例えば軍の位置とかそういうものを引き出すということがあるんだけど、もちろんそれ自身も禁止されてはいるんだけど、ウクライナや現代の紛争では拷問がテリファイ、つまり恐怖を巻き起こし、恐怖心を起こすことによって、戦略的に有利にするために行われていて、何から情報を得るかではなくて恐怖心を植え付けるために行われていて、それがウクライナでも非常に組織的に行われていると。先ほど説明した村の事件などでもそういうような形で村のトップのリーダーたちが拷問を受けていると。それによって、ウクライナ側につくんではなくてロシア側につけというような心理的な圧力を与えるような形になっている。でジェノサイドというのがあります。これは特定の例えば宗教的民族的なグループを丸ごと破壊するということを目的にしたものですけれども、トーチャーによって、社会的なその生活から切り離されてしまうということがあり、その拷問を多くすることによって実質的に一つの民族集団や宗教集団を破壊していくということが行われているということですね。ですから必ずしも殺すということだけによって起こっているわけではなくて、そういうトーチャーとかあるいはレイプについても言及されましたけども、そういった行為によって一つの民族集団、一つの宗教集団としての生活が壊されていくという、そういう側面があるということだと思います。OK、thank you.
Now, there could be another case another real case that I could be discussing. I mean, I have 100 cases, more or less, but maybe I should leave space for the Q&A. What would you prefer that I do?
Yes.
Q&A.
I think a little bit more than the 30 minutes we still have, so that we will move to the Q&A session if you want. It's okay? So, I finished. Time is almost over, so if you want, I will give you some time for closing.
Okay, once again, what can I say? Please help me turn around the situation, help me change the situation, and let's try to contribute to build a consistent and coherent global justice system, okay? Where people are held accountable. If we don't do that, we will slide in World War III. These are my closing remarks. So why we do that? We do that because we want to protect peace. We are not. Don't think about when you see Ukrainians and you see how combative they are fighters. Okay, so think these people are violent and so on. Unfortunately, peace must be defended. If you don't react both on the military side and on the legal side, and you just let that happen, we would be sliding in World War II in that situation. A country that invades another country for no reason in the 21st century must be punished, must be held accountable. Otherwise, the next time, maybe Russia wants to stop to Ukraine. They say, no, we don't care about the rest of the world. That's Western hysteria. Okay, it's Western hysteria. We will not come to Europe and invade other countries. You are crazy thinking about that. That's what the Russians say, okay? Very well. But once Russia can freely invade Ukraine, maybe the next time, I don't know, we will see another country do the same, because Russia did so and it was not punished. You know, this is the way things work. And right now, if we go into World War III, remember, this is not a kid's matter, a kid's game anymore. Now we have weapons that can destroy the planet Earth in one second, okay? So it is not like, 100 years ago, well, there were cannons and firearms and stuff like that, but now we have atomic bombs. If we go into World War III, we destroy our world. So I think that it's important to defend peace. Thank you once again for your attention and your time.
教授の簡単にまとめると、つまり、国際的な正義を実現するし、今の状況を変えるために支援をしてほしい、彼らに対する支援をしてほしい。20世紀が、国が他の国を侵略することによって第二次世界大戦が始まってしまったように、もし今、ロシアの行動を我々が許せば、次にまた別の国が同じようなことをするようになる。それを止める、平和を守るためには、それを糾弾しなければならないということを言われて、クローズングをされました。So, thank you very much for your presentation. On behalf of the早稲田 Law School, I would like to express my deepest thanks to your lectures. And I hope you will have another opportunity to come to Waseda with some good result of your activities in Ukraine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 皆さんありがとうございました。それではもう時間になりましたので、以上で講演会を終了していきます。ありがとうございました。